The song is the most important thing, not me. Just little things like not playing a crash, man, that's hard. That's actually really hard to do. The most important question to ask is, what if I?
Nice work, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
To all of you out there watching, please welcome Chris Allison to Drumeo. Chris, it's great to have you here, man.
Man, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me out.
Of course. And any of you out there who aren't familiar with Chris, you've been drumming with Plini, the guitarist, for like 6 years to the day almost.
Pretty close, yeah. I think it is to the day.
Yeah.
Which is kind of wild. Yeah, time flies, man. Time flies.
I think I saw you guys probably like 5 years ago or so. So you must have been pretty new to the band, but I remember seeing Plini play. I'm like, who's that guy on drums? Like, he's not on the records that I've heard, but yeah, I just remember being like blown away by your playing.
Man,
so
too kind. Yeah, that would have been maybe with Tesseract, supporting Tesseract.
I think it was.
Yeah, that would have been my first US, North American tour.
Okay.
So stands to reason.
crazy. Like fast forward 5 years and here we are.
Here we are together, man. It's crazy, man. Absolutely. So thanks again, man.
Of course. Yeah, I love it. So make sure you go check out all of Chris's work on the last few Plini records. You've got some new music coming out soon, which is great. And we're actually going to be playing a brand new song that came out today, the day we're streaming this live.
Correct, man. Yeah. So it's a freshie.
Yeah, so make sure you stick around to the end to hear that. And make sure you're following Chris on all of his social media channels. All the links are down in the description. Go check him out on tour. Go check out all the music he's recorded. And we do this kind of thing on Drumeo all the time. We bring in guests just like Chris. We do these live events where we feature a drummer, check out the music they've recorded, have a discussion. But inside the members area, we also have a full method that will teach you how to play the drums, lots of drumless tracks, and full note-for-note transcriptions for over 5,000 songs, including lots of stuff from Plini. So if you want to check that out, there's a link down below, drumeo.com/trial, and you can see everything that we're up to there. And this is going to be a cool lesson because I guess we've titled this Creative Drumming Workshop. And when we were talking about what we should title this lesson and what it should be about, the first thing you mentioned was like your concepts and approaches to coming up with creative parts for the music you're creating with Plini. So we're going to talk about a bunch of concepts and be playing a bunch of music. And before we do that, let's jump into one other song.
Okay,
and
cool.
This one's called Impulse Voices.
Title track on that record. Yeah.
Anything we should know about this track before you play it?
It's called Impulse Voices. That's a good start. Yeah, no, it's a fun little track. It's the first track I received when the demoing process started for this song, which was about maybe April 2020. So as soon as like the world locked down, Plini just went into hardcore writing mode. And this was the first thing that I got sent. And it was like, oh, this, working on that record got me through the first half of that pandemic, which is
nice.
So that's cool. So, a lot of sentiment around that, which is nice. Yeah. But yeah, man, it's a fun little song. Let's do it. And it's got some fun drum parts. So let's do it.
Love it. Let's hear it. So in this lesson, we're talking all about creative drumming and how you apply different concepts to Plini's music and the parts that you write. So I know this is a hot topic for a lot of drummers because I think, especially new drummers, a lot of people struggle with coming up with new things. And we hear all the time at Drumeo, like from students, like I'm stuck playing the same thing over and over again. And how do I get out of that rut? So I'll let you just take it away and kind of talk about your approach and some of the concepts that you use.
Yeah, man. Well, I was like a lot of the students on Drumeo. I also was just stuck. I've been stuck in a rut for forever. Like it always just happens, right? You always have peaks and valleys in your playing, and we're just like, okay, everything I'm doing is new and exciting, and then it just sits the same for a while. So there's a few little things that I like to kind of think about to get me out of those ruts. And a lot of people ask me about creativity, and to me, the most important question to ask or the most important question I ask myself is, what if I? So what do I mean by that? It's like, okay, if I'm just playing a regular groove with just eighth notes on the hat, just like a rock groove, what if you change the hi-hat ostinato, for example? So it's just, if you're able to ask these little questions like this, and just like, what if I move that snare a 16th note ahead? So instead of just being on 2 and 4, now the first one's on the of beat 1, for example. That's gonna all of a sudden, that's going to open up your ears to a new type of groove. It's going to open up just options for you, right? So for me, that question of what if I just do this, try this one little thing. Look, it's not always going to work. I've asked that question and then done something and been like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
That's really bad. Let's never do that again. But when you do something like that, you then know to never do that again. You'll know, I don't like that sound, whatever it is. So you're able to still, even though you didn't necessarily succeed in coming up with something you liked, you figured out something you didn't like, which is also a great way to kind of, your own personal voice on the instrument. It's a way to develop that, is to know what you don't like.
Yeah.
So you can then focus on the things that you do like. So that question of what if is a big one. Like for example, that first cross stick groove in that song, when I did start demoing that was more or less the groove that was on Plini's demo. But I was like, okay, well, what if, I wanted to give him options. So I was like, okay, what if I play a shaker in my right hand and play the upbeat eighth notes with a left foot and do that? So I recorded that. And then I kind of simulated that kind of vibe with between these hats, right? So I was kind of like simulating a bit of a shaker.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he just wanted that original groove, so that's what's on there. But I gave him options, right? And then that opened up my kind of creativity there to be like, what else could I do here? So asking, what if I just play a shaker instead? That's step one, as far as I'm concerned.
So when we were going back and forth about this lesson, there's a whole bunch of concepts that you mentioned, and I'm actually curious to dive into some of these and see what you have to say about them, even demonstrate some stuff. But the first one you mentioned was obfuscation.
Right. Yeah.
What do you mean by that, and how do we apply that on the drums?
Yeah, so that in particular, there's kind of 2 songs where that kind of applies. The first one was actually the first tune we played, I played, called I'll Tell You Someday. And just the opening drum fill or drum solo, whatever you want to call it, the guitar at the start of it is just groups of 5. You as a listener, there's no other reference point other than that, right? So you will either go kind of 2 ways with it. It's like you'll hear them as 16th notes, like groups of 5 in 16th notes. You might hear it as quintuplets. So you're determining as you're listening where the time is.
Yeah.
Okay. Now Plini's idea was like, his exact words were like, I want the start to sound like a big mess. That was the creative direction I got for that. So I was like, okay, man. So I had to kind of figure out what that meant. And what I found worked best was to play a bunch of subdivisions that aren't that, basically. So to use, rhythmic dissonance to create this tension and so when those hits come in, you just go, I thought I knew where it was. I have no idea where it is, right? So it's that idea of just covering it, just not disguising where the time is, basically. And so it's like, okay, I have no idea what's going on. And the thing as a songwriter and as a composer, the thing I know that you don't as a listener when you're first listening to it is that there's a bit coming up that's going to be a lot more obvious. So it's kind of this kind of idea of like tension and then the release of, okay, there's the time.
Yeah.
Because the next idea is like there's a kind of like a floaty kind of groove with a ride ding, da da ding, da da ding, da da ding. That's obvious where the time is now.
Yeah.
So I know that that's coming up, so I can be as weird as possible leading up to that, because I know that there's going to be this contrast immediately after.
Yeah.
So that's one example of how you can just use rhythmic dissonance to obfuscate the time and just make it very kind of ambiguous, I guess would be one word you could use.
I'm gonna put the guys in the control room on the spot. Can we actually load up? That's in the beginning of the first track?
It's the first thing that happens, yeah.
Can we load up the beginning of that song, and then just so we can hear this, knowing that that's kind of the concept?
Yeah, do you want me to play it again? Or?
Yeah, let's do it with the track.
All right.
I know.
You know where it is.
I know the trick.
Yeah, exactly. So it becomes a bit more clear there.
Yeah.
At least for you as a listener, you get the trick.
But even when you added the hi-hats there, like, that's not where my ear would have went.
Right, sure.
On first listen, I would have probably went with the guitar, the dun 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 dun.
Right, yeah.
And
that's exactly what I did when I first heard it too. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, so it's a neat little trick that, obviously that's not going to work in like a traditional rock band or something like that. Like it obviously works in this kind of setting where there is a lot of freedom and exploration, but it doesn't have to be that obvious, I suppose. That can be used in any kind of song. You just got to figure out where it's appropriate. That's the hard part with that type of stuff.
Don't do that on your singer-songwriter gig.
Yeah, don't do that at a wedding gig or something like that. Yeah. Unless you are looking to get out of that gig, in which case, knock yourself out because you'll get fired real quick. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Another one you wanted to talk about, or you mentioned, was setting parameters. So how do you use this to promote creativity?
Sure, yeah. This is actually a trick I use all the time. And it'll just be something really small, like, okay, in this part, I'm going to try and hold out playing a crash as long as I can. Right? Particularly in instrumental music, there tends to be a lot of cymbals happening. So I try at times to go the exact opposite. So for example, again with, I'll tell you some, impulse voices, there isn't a crash cymbal, a big obvious crash cymbal until I guess the second half of the song. The first half of it, it's just all on the hats, right? There's no obvious crash cymbals besides one swell. So just little things like that. It just means it's so often you hear drummers, they're playing a crash, and there's crashes happening all the time. Try not to do that. And that's a hard habit to break if you're used to hitting a crash cymbal every 4 bars or whatever. So it might be something as simple as that. Another example in that song, Impulse Voices, is there's a section just before the big hits, the real big hit, dun, dun. There's a section where the drums kind of improvise, but the rule I have there is that the one of every second bar, there's a big crash and snare at the same time, which is, if you were to listen to Plini's demo of that part, it's not very interesting. But there was one thing I took away from it, which was there was one time that happened. I was like, oh, that's a nice little hook. Let's try and do that. So, and then I know I've got 2 bars to just play whatever.
Yeah.
And the point of that section was to build tension. So by kind of just doing that every 2 bars and then playing anything I want around that in kind of a 16th note kind of vibe, like do a really bad Keith Carlock impersonation for 2 bars, that kind of like what can happen is like, does this guy know what's going on or not? Does he? What is actually going on in this drum part? It's a bit weird. But then again, I know coming out of that, there's big hits, right? So I can be weird and set that parameter of, okay, that's what the drum part is. And that changes, day to day, night to night. But just little things like not playing a crash, man, that's hard.
Yeah.
It's actually really hard to do, particularly when they're sitting here and they look nice. And it's just like this. Yeah, exactly. So there's a track on the upcoming EP called Still Life, which is out December at some point, I think. And there's not a crash cymbal in that for like a minute and a half.
Yeah.
And there's lots of playing happening. There's lots of weird playing happening in between that. But again, I just didn't want to play a crash cymbal. So I'm trying to make it exciting without using a crash cymbal.
Yeah.
Just little things like that, man. Like I always just try and, if I can set myself parameters like that, even if it is just that, or I just find I have so much more freedom because then it's like, okay, I know what I can't do.
Yeah.
So then all these other things pop up. So I can, my mind can go elsewhere in a sense and just try and play some stuff that I wouldn't normally think of if I've got a crash cymbal at my disposal. Or toms or whatever, like that might be another thing. Like I want to try not to play toms. There's a track on Impulse Voices where there's no toms until the last chorus.
Nice.
So all my fills are just snare based,
Yeah, but when that does happen, it actually packs a punch.
Right, it's like, I didn't even notice
it's like ear candy.
Missing them. Yeah, exactly. And that's what, that's something I actually picked up from listening to Questlove. There's, on the D'Angelo record, Black Messiah, there's like 3 tracks in a row where there's no crash cymbals at all. But then the start of the whatever the next track is, there's a big crash cymbal. And I realized finally. Once listening, I was like, man, I haven't heard that in ages. Yeah. Oh, that's super interesting. There's this big, long, nice shh. It really packs a punch because you've finally heard it. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I can add a bit of that into kind of this type of stuff, playing more or not D'Angelo music, basically. Yeah.
The one drummer that comes to mind for me, you said Questlove, but Steve Jordan.
Sure, another great example.
A John Mayer record called Battle Studies. And I can't remember if it's Heartbreak Warfare or Assassin or Assassins or something. And same sort of deal. There's fills on the toms and stuff, but he never resolves to the crash until like 3 or 4 minutes in. And when he does, it's like, whoa, what did I just hear?
Exactly, man. Yeah, I've heard that, like Steve Jordan on I think Vultures he does it on that
just
track as well.
Sits there for
man, just doesn't move
so long.
Also, Steve Gadd, there's an old James Taylor record that called October Road. My old man used to play it all the time, and there's this one moment in one song where he's doing nothing the whole song. And then there's just one little moment where he deviates from that, and it's just like, oh, whoa, that hits real hard. Like that's the coolest drumming I've ever heard. But if you were to just look at it on paper, it's like, that sucks. Like, it doesn't suck, but it's just not that exciting. It shouldn't be as exciting as it is, but it's that context before it that makes that really, really exciting.
Yeah, and I guess for any beginners out there who are wanting to kind of explore this could be as simple as playing like a money beat for 3 minutes and not adding an extra kick drum until the final chorus. Or it could
not
be
at all,
anything at all, or not playing fills, or not playing anything but the ride cymbal and the hi-hat. It's really up to your creativity and your imagination as to how you apply this. And I love that analogy of Questlove, where I think a lot of drummers would say, well, I took this groove or this fill from Questlove. But your approach is more, I took this concept of him doing this thing and applied it into a completely different context.
Yeah, man.
Super cool.
It was just something that really stuck out. Like, obviously, Questlove rules, like that guy.
Of course.
So his playing it speaks for itself, but there's just little things like that where I go, oh man, just, you need to think about that. Like, that is a conscious decision. That is not just, I didn't feel like it. Yeah. Maybe it was that, but I doubt it. I think they're like, intentionally, they probably didn't even have crashes set up.
Let's move to another song. I'm excited to hear this one. This is a bit of an epic. This is a 9-minute track. Plini's The Glass Bead Game. Yep. And anything we should know about this track?
Okay, so in terms of like creativity in this song is based around a rhythm in 15. and it goes through basically every permutation of being a rhythm in 15 that you can have. So this one's more like metrically dense, with some cool stuff happening on the drums.
Nice.
But yeah, it's a fun tune, as stressful as it can be.
Well, we get to see it in action. So
yeah.
It's great.
Let's do it.
Good luck.
Thank you, man.
Dude, that's wild. Like, what do you say after that?
It's a bit much, I know. It's a bit much.
Like all the modulations, and it really does go through every possible permutation.
I'm not a liar, that's for sure.
What's your process in like memorizing all those parts? Obviously, there's different riffs and things that you're listening for, but is it just repetition, or are you just like drilling certain sections and kind of just piecing it together like a puzzle?
With something like that, that song obviously is a bit of a doozy. Like there's a lot going on, like you said. A little bit. So like when I first got that demo and I was piecing together my parts, I wrote out a chart. I had to write out a chart, a really basic one. I just use a slash, slashes for bars, and then I might just write out key rhythms.
Yeah.
Not necessarily drum rhythms, just like the key rhythms that are in the song, like particularly that double bass stuff at the start.
Yeah.
If I didn't write that out, trying to hear all the finer nuances in that stuff was going to be completely lost on me. So that was the first part, but once I got through like the entire song and had more or less charted it all out, it took a little while. Like I'm not a once listen through kind of guy with that type of stuff, but once I'd done that, a lot of it was already up here. So it was just technically learning it, but the song itself was already up there because I'd written it, was already up here because I'd written it down.
Gotcha.
You know, that's not always how I work, but for something like that, I definitely had to write a lot of that stuff out because trying to remember a 9-minute song any other way that's in 15 was going to be just not happening at all. So.
There's a few good questions that have come in from some of the Drumeo students.
Cool.
That I think are pretty relevant. One is from Rat Tyla, asking, what's the trick to playing so much without overplaying?
Wow, yeah, that's a really, really good question. I think particularly playing technical music like Plini, like we do in Plini, there can be sometimes a premium put on making sure people know that you sound really clever, like overcomplicating things.
Yeah.
So if I know that, okay, we're going to do a bunch of modulations like I just did in that song, I don't want to just show you every possible thing that I can do there. I want to make sure it's, I still want the song to sound good.
Yeah.
So I generally try and keep my ideas pretty simple within a difficult context already. Like I know the song is hard enough, I don't need to add more stuff to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a fine line realistically, but I think just through time and experimenting, again, like knowing where that limit is by doing it a few times and just trying, learning to fail, basically.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they're not all first ideas. I tried other things and they sucked and maybe they were too difficult, and I listen back and I go, okay, I'm just trying to sound clever there. That kind of sucks. And generally I find that if I'm trying to sound clever, it sucks.
Yeah.
To listen to. It might be the best drumming that I've ever done in my life, but as a listener, it sucks. And to me, that's the most important thing. I want to make sure that you guys like the song, and not that I just sound like the best drummer in the world, which I definitely am not. But to me, the song is always important. So just experimenting, and taste will eventually, you'll develop your own taste of things that you like.
Yeah.
But I think as long as you're not trying to sound too clever, that's the best way to get out of that trap.
I think overplaying too is, some of it is preference. And then also, no one understands your gig better than you.
Totally, absolutely.
So your lens is through what does Plini actually want on this track, where that's probably information that none of us have.
Right.
And so, for all we know, he may have asked you to play more. We just had Tosh, the drummer, if you're familiar with him. And,
yes.
He gets a lot of criticism for that too. And he was saying the same thing, like that's what his bosses are asking him for and what he's getting hired for. So to the public versus him, like there's different information and a different context.
No, totally.
So,
and the other thing is, like, Plini would probably want me to play more drums, but I'm like, nah, dude, it's too much. It's too much. Like, come on, man. So if anything, I'm telling him, nah, let's dial it back because, we don't want the song to suffer. It'd be nice to just do a drum solo. Actually, it wouldn't be nice to do that, but it's all about using taste, and it's like, okay, the song is the most important thing, not me.
Yeah.
Or whatever instrument you are. It's like,
Yeah.
the song is it. The song is where it's at.
Nice. Do you want to do Papelillo?
Sure.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do this one. Some greasy ghost notes in there. The chat was just, they're like, look at those ghost notes.
Cool, man.
Also, lots of shout outs on your socks.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
What's the deal with the socks?
That's my son.
Oh, is it actually?
That's my son, Vincent. He's watching at home.
Nice.
That's a Father's Day gift, so my partner, Amy, is going to be really stoked that they made it on the camera.
Nice. It's great, on the foot cam. Shout out to Vincent for being featured.
Absolutely, man, absolutely.
That's so awesome.
I'm glad that came up, man. I'm really glad. That's so good. That's so good.
Oh, I love it.
Well spotted, everyone.
Yeah. Chris, thanks so much for being here, man.
Thank you so much for having us, man. Like, again, the entire team here, absolutely amazing. It's been a pleasure, a joy, and nice and easy, which is good. Yeah.
We're going to close out with a song that came out today, the day we're streaming this on YouTube.
Yeah, about 4 hours ago or something like that. So
yeah.
It's a freshie.
So this is called Ember.
Ember, yep. So it's off the Plini's new EP, which is called Mirage, which is coming out in early December, maybe the 4th. Don't quote me on that. But,
yeah. And the music video is super sick. So
yeah, man.
Go check that out on YouTube as well.
Definitely.
Plini's channel.
Yeah, man, for sure.
All right, so this is the last track called Ember. And Chris, take it away, man.
Thank you so much, man.